G'day, mate. I'm here in our studio today. Cambo just got into the car. You could hear the door slam. The door might slam a bit during our program. People getting in and out. We're sitting in a nice, beautiful Jag, and we're just under beautiful trees here. And we're in a garden. Everybody just selected today, and we've got a few people just sitting around listening. Yeah. So really glad to be with everyone. I hope everybody's really been enjoying our program all about eye awareness, and you've been practicing, as you're getting up in the morning, you have a very exciting thought, what I mean, or your feelings and things. But isn't it amazing, Lukey, how those Georgian Guidestones are there, and basically it says to get rid of apparently 95% of the people on the earth got to be cold. Have you heard much about that, mate?
I have heard about the Guidestones, yeah.
And it seems like if a tsunami came and wiped everything out, those Rushmore faces would be there, wouldn't they? That'd be lovely. And apparently they've got a few scribbles, there. Very things lately, of course, what's happened with the Constitution and everything, and some other stuff, that they like to put in there. And they made a bit of a hall of records. Did you hear about that?
No, that one I didn't.
Yeah, it's right there with the Rushmores, faces, carved into the stone there. But very lovely, isn't it? Those faces of those men, how beautiful, those faces will be right there in the rocks, and definitely that'll be there for a long, long time. But a lot of stuff except for the plastic would be just washed away, wouldn't it? But the Georgian Guidestones have been put really in a beautiful spot there, even if the new Madrid fault line goes and splits the country in half, sort of thing, which sort of is predicted at some point. And then, all these earth changes do occur. The spot they've selected to put those Georgian Guidestones is lovely, and they're big rocks, and so they're put, so they'd survive. But except for the plastic, and Rushmore and these big stones, and then except for a few people that survive, that have got in underneath it, what are they called? These little dumbos, or are they? Or underground bases and things. It's possible they could survive a bit, some of the onslaught of things coming up. But the eugenics program, which is rule number 1, it's not even rule number 2. Isn't that amazing? It's so exciting for the banker to have etched that story into the stone, so they've done things like that in the past, inferiority, superiority sort of stuff, and then they put those things there, and then just everybody sort of the presupposition exists that if you say you look much better today, meaning that you look like SH1T yesterday. People are actually sort of talking about things using presuppositions, and actually, they're using subliminals and things like that. But those stones are really amazing, aren't they? I'd love people to see pictures of it. It's a bit like the Stonehenge and things, only a bit more modern, yeah. But anyway, it's personally a horror story, actually, what's written on the rocks there about rule number 1 of the 10 Commandments, sort of basically it's sort of code for culling the population of the earth by 95%. Do you think that anybody might be concerned about that at all, or probably it's okay, What do you reckon, mate?
I always felt that the only thing that, the best thing that I could do is kind of like vote with my dollar and what can one person do kind of thing. But I assume, I know for a fact that those people who wrote that don't know about life food agrarianism, and that was probably enough for everybody. They're going on.
Well, we can feed right now 2.5 billion people more, and got to get the word out. Who knows about life food? Got to, though, right? And who is more powerful in what they've said? If there was anybody listening, I'd really love to hear about that person, because you've got a lot of people running around like drunk monkeys, stung by scorpions, and they're writing books profusely, and they do everything they can really a bit to sideline, things which really is more correct, actually. You know what I mean? So it's really lovely. But if people could put little things in there that's a bit weird, sort of like cats growing leaves or, trees meowing and things like that, the hand above the government loves that, because it sort of confuses things a lot, doesn't it? But there's politically sort of correct ways, isn't there, to deal with the population of the earth. We've got car doors opening and closing on the show. Dino's just come back to the car, and he might be sitting in with us or standing up. He loves to stand up, actually. But anyway, so the car doors can be opening and closing during the show. Is that okay, Lukey? Is that okay, mate?
I didn't even notice this was coming in good.
Oh, good on you, mate. Yeah, because our people make a lot of noise around us, and it's so enjoyable. But anyway, I really care very much. We have a good audio, that everybody has the ability to be able to listen in good. But anyway, there's really politically correct ways that the hand above the government goes about the eugenics, certainly, and certainly the radioactive material that's been unleashed is equivalent to perhaps, I don't know, some people have estimated maybe 10,000 nuclear radioactive sort of bombs and stuff. It's just sort of dumped everywhere. But it's politically correct that it could be put that it was sort of a natural disaster and stuff, and made it look like that more. It's like you can't convince an intellectual that they went to the moon. You know what I mean? Because anybody who's just had a look at that, no, that's just really absolute sort of lies. But pet food consumption is really being foisted on people, isn't it? And that really does block the body's ability to produce a glycogen. And most of these people, they have really major situations with the skin and connective tissue, don't they? And the older they get, the more they itch until they itch themselves to death, really. But to keep acid coat of the skin is impossible for these people because they use and are instructed to use soaps, which are extremely alkaline. And those alkaline elements are often used in poisons, as a matter of fact. But putting them into the body care products, a lot of these people are very hypochondriacal, and if you look inside their bathroom, their bathroom is full of all of these conditioners and lotions and soaps and estrogen and alkaline elements that really, other than allow your skin to remain intact, And, well, that's a way to get rid of people, isn't it, really? If you can just sort of cause products even to just come in and itch their skin because they just don't have proper levels of acid in their skin because of the soaps and things. In all disease, of course, the acid coat of the skin and certainly the intestinal tract really is very, very seriously disturbed, isn't it? And that is actually cancer, really. But the skin scale from people like that, it does show under a spectrum analysis to have histamine in it. And the vast majority of these people, they could have a bladder removed, or they're just continuing to have cholesterol solidify, and they'll stuff themselves on crackers and cheese and things. And if you put anything good in front of them, they refuse it. You know what I mean? Because they've eaten already. They're real junkies. But liver and celiac disease is really common, isn't it? If you're just foisting dead food on people. But why not have generate random acts of kindness, spontaneously, And why don't we live simply that others can just simply live? It's just really not possible to do that, is it, really? Because most people are impressed, very, very impressed, and they've got to really be able to burn a bit more rubber on the road if they can, and everybody sort of has to shift into a bigger house in the past, but people are now sort of shifting into smaller houses. And these things occupy people's brains, it just can occupy them, and wage slavery and money being equivalent to time can cause a great, beautiful lobotomization of itself. And some of these bankers just said, well, just let me control the country's money supply, thank you. And I don't care who's making the law. But if you generate random acts of kindness and you live simply that others can simply live, that's a beautiful thing. But joy really in the world, Lukey, is everybody really wants other people to be happy. And what a lovely thing that is. Isn't that so lovely? Everyone you ask, they all want the other person to be happy. And that's a very wonderful thing, isn't it? But the most amazing thing is that if you ask everybody about their own self, they often don't give a shit about themselves, They're really running around caring that other people are happy and trying to get happiness from other people being happy, you know what I mean? But most of them, if you ask them, do they care really much about themselves, they don't really care much about themselves at all, But anyway, these are cute tricks that are done to people. If a phantom, like a fiction, could be put, because if anybody could be put just that they signed a piece of paper or anything, and after that, it's like you're considered a bee, and this is a real bit of a travesty, but that's sort of what's happening to the stock, And I was wondering, Cambo was just looking up a little bit in the studio here, what was happening to Julian Assange. Anything at all, mate?
Some concerns about his health. Obviously, he's stuck in there. And can he step out and get treatment? Because as soon as he steps out in the embassy, of course, the Brits will be all over him. So that's that.
This is sort of the kind of thing, I guess, that a prize sonner has to be suffered of, because the fiction and the phantom, which really isn't any person, because there's no injury or anything done whatsoever, you see. That has to be disappeared, which it is pretty much in the beginning, because Julian had to be represented. And that means that the person becomes a beast. Yes. And not allowed to really say anything much themselves at the trial, and so then they have an attorney on you or an attorney on me, a work there, and it just is the business of the bank, really. He's a sort of a debtor, you see. So because there's no constitutional money, there's no constitutional rights, you see. And they sort of really have apparently the right just to hold anybody, and they can keep them in prize sum. It's interesting that the English don't call it prize daughter, but it's called prize son. It's really politically correct if you've got a phantom and it's just a faceless person, nameless. And if it could be nameless, that's the better thing. And ACS in New York, they have nameless morons, speaking for that handkerchief that runs the place, that they hired, that young half-wit, that runs ACS, But the bloke who really got a peace sort of prize and everything, a lot of people know actually inside certainly that those 3,000 people odd or more really were killed, and there's a lot of story about that, isn't there? Certainly a good minds question, but we definitely do know the official story is just for the sheeple, isn't it? But you've got to really do what you can to generate random acts of kindness at some point here, because if you don't, that's not so really good, because you're not really living simply that others simply live, and because of that, you sort of really are not doing what's natural. So what's coming down the pike on people not doing things natural, you know what I mean? That's not good, is it, really? But if you've got to prepare a city and you've got to really make sure that there's no money, like in 2007 when they did this to me and my boy, there were 10,000 quality of life crimes that were simply just not investigated that year, and the money was just quickly siphoned off, you know what I mean, because they had to have lockdown, they spent all the money on lockdown, you know what I mean, and they shifted it, and that's a civic crime, you know what I mean, because there were 10,000 quality of life crimes that the police were ordinarily investigating for people, but all of a sudden they just sort of didn't do it, you know what I mean, and they had to, spend the money on crackdown. Yeah, anyway, that's another story. But anyway, the Ecuadorians, they're really concerned about Julian's health, aren't they? Because they don't know even what to do, I mean, his body is just a warehouse receipt, just being treated like a warehouse receipt. And you have the evidence of it right there in front of your eyes, you know what I mean? Pretty amazing. But anyway, you've got people like that beautiful, innocent fellow David Hicks, that Australian fellow, he was tortured. He was called a kangaroo, fucker, by the Americans. And most of them there were selected so that they'd push the button even if they heard screaming, behind the curtain, as long as there was someone with a white lab coat, telling them what to do. So they had lots and lots of people like that. There was only 3 people that weren't at Abu Ghabu, and they were whistleblowers. So they did everything they could to get rid of people like that, so that there would be no anybody really sort of dobbing anybody in for, torturing people like David Hicks. And the Australians, because there's really no country anymore there, it's just a corporation of the Federal Reserve Bank, even their own Australian citizen could easily be just set upon and their bodies punished. And this is the sort of message that this is really sort of obvious, But Bradley Manning, apparently, he's a really innocent boy, and he's a soldier. We can understand how most of these boys could have even had a trauma to the head, which we could talk about. I don't know, we'll get to it. But, Bradley certainly, he's been held as a soldier beyond 120 days. And when you sign up as a soldier, you're doing what this is. You're really caring about people 100%. And you could be not necessarily cared for or being cared for, you see, as a piece of property, but that your body might not be worth the property that you're defending, you see. And you could have signed something to say that, but you should have had a trial within 120 days. And Bradley, really, he's been held 1,000 days, you know what I mean? Certainly that is equivalent to cruel and unusual punishment, but you don't really have a constitution, you know what I mean? Because there's no money to support any constitutional rights. Did you hear that, Lukey? good on you, mate. Okay. Anyway, there's and they really love to lag, you know. It's really excellent, you know, for the hand above the government. Their style, if you look at what they do, which is criminal, is to lag, and they leave a fingerprint like a dumb-witted, you know, half-wit behind. Honest to God, fingerprints all over the place, you know, that lead them to be considered in history when you look back a couple thousand years as being dumb as beetles, you know, seriously dumb as beetles, honest to God. But anyway, that's another thing. But I really feel for David Hicks, certainly, you know, because he was innocent, you know, absolutely innocent. And he was seriously tortured, mate, all right? And I don't care for anybody to have to gone through such like that, you know what I mean? And or others to participate in crap like that, you know what I mean? But if you get rid of those very good soldiers like they did, you know, at Gaetano, you know, but and so there wouldn't be any whistleblowers, you know what I mean? You've got at Abu Dhabi, a few people just sort of surprised them, you know, but training has to be to quickly get rid of people, you know, who blow the whistle and that sort of thing, you know. Yeah, but that's sort of funny. But anyway, Dominic Johansson, he's a young boy in Sweden, and heavy boots and taser and you know, pepper spray and stuff came on board a plane, you know. His parents were homeschooling, you know, and we allow homeschooling here. Isn't that a beautiful thing?
Mm-hmm.
Allowing homeschooling, I mean, you know, but in Sweden, you know, you can't really do that, right? If you're a parent and you really want to homeschool your kid, you know, heavy boots could come on plane, you know, and just take the kid, you know, quick, smart, whoa, I'm telling you. But anyway, Dominic Johansson, you know, one of the things they said about him, you know, Lukey, they reckon he was a bit too friendly. Did you know that?
No.
They reckon he was a bit too friendly, mate. You know. So a social report was written about him, reckon he was a bit too friendly. You know what I mean? But secret sort of stuff, you know. Anyway, after they had him for a while, he fell in love with the captors, you know what I mean? And he hates his folks. You know what I mean? And that sort of cognitive dissonance, that's perfect how it works. They do call it Stockholm Syndrome, you know, in the world. You know, it is because people there have fallen in love with the bank robbers, you know. Yeah. But it's an example of sort of what happens, isn't it, really? Anyway, you can really cause people to have bigger septal regions and get into their frontal cortex by having more pleasure, and they can be born more with bigger brains and everything as well. Or you can sort of subject people to stress and that in utero and things, you know. And they're born with larger amygdalas and tegmentums, which are involved in aversion. And so they quickly sort of jump on aversion and sort of good things and stuff sort of that doesn't sort of really emotionally affect them much at all, you know. But these are the sort of things that are eugenically easily sort of being done to people, you know. Anyway, the Swedish district court has sort of ruled recently, apparently, many years later, of course, you know, it's really convenient for them just to, like, rule later, you know what I mean? and they can have a rule that says, oh yeah, well, those parents' rights are not terminated. Isn't that amazing? They're not terminated. How's that? Isn't that amazing? It's like, I don't want you to run across the road. And at the end of the trial, they say they point out to the person that they're not guilty. Isn't that funny? It's so funny. You know what I mean? It's really, really cute. But anyway, that's the sort of things that happen, isn't it? But if they create a lot of thyroid problems by just feeding people, I think it could be $2.73 or something worth food, but they charge a lot of money to house the Praisana and things, which costs a fortune, and it drives the gross national product up in England. It could really, for instance, the Swedish fiction of the bank, which doesn't have a person at all or a victim that can hold Julian. They can only really have held him because he's considered a beast, because he's not in charge of his own mind, and some piece of paper has been signed somewhere which, that should be really undone. But why do you have to undo all of that sort of stuff to protect yourself? You know what I mean? But anyway, apparently that really can affect thyroid function, and they can certainly use the lily wave and stuff to affect the 60 hertz and carry a piggyback frequency wave there into the building and things, and that sort of influences the emotion from the voice and everything that's being heard and that sort of thing. They can do so much. It's incredible. You know what I mean? But anyway, if you really don't have really good thyroid function, you don't really eat live food, certainly not. And even if you did, it might not work because you could have bile occlusion. But only proper thyroid function really is incurred, and you have really good bile function. But most people have such serious bile occlusion, and they really fart like crazy, and their farts really stink. But they don't have any vitamin D because they have a very serious global fat challenge. And then they're addicted to fats. If you put some cheese in front of them, they'll eat that all up, and they won't touch anything that's living, Yeast has to take hold of the person to destroy them, sort of, And it's like it sort of makes a grasshopper, for instance, a fungus do. Funguses can cause grasshoppers to commit suicide by jumping in the water, which they wouldn't ordinarily do, But the fungus makes the grasshopper do that sort of thing. So, bread and cheese sort of has people, they'll eat themselves to death if they've ever gone through stages where they ate that. It's sort of very addictive and opiate-like. But they'll have a lot of dysbiotic colloid in their intestinal tract. And how can they have good brain function after that? Certainly they won't have any thyroid or thymus function, you see, so their temperature regulation is changed and stuff. And then the Praisana is kept in the cold and damp, and there's black mold and no lighting, you see that, which is very important to kill their bodies. So their bodies are being killed and destroyed and injured, and that's important apparently because it drives the gross national product up more, because if you save $5 a day, doing something else, that can't really be right, because you've got to have a higher gross national product, and that's equivalent to sickness and disease, because you've got a goat jumping on top of another goat where you've got a private person owning the growth of the money supply, you see, and that's just what they do to make sure everybody is in control, and then people who really are doing this is us, and then if everybody sort of is zombieized, how good is that? It's sort of like a politically correct way to deal with sort of things, and that's why 5 times as much is spent, on that sort of thing. And that's why sort of a fiction can have held Julian Assange where he is, and then it's a maritime law, and of course, because there's no constitutional money, no constitutional rights, no one would ever consider that anybody retaliated at all against Julian, and nor any husband or wife or in any situation, matter of fact, in any court, basically. There was no such thing, really, So that's the way that the banker, the captain of the ship, getting the high tide to be over the land, and at, the top of the mountain, which it shouldn't be. But it's not really civil rights at all. But, you can't really have civil rights if you don't have money to supply that, and that you don't own the growth of the money supply yourself as a people. But we as a people, we could do everything we could not to listen to Thomas Jefferson and all of these founding people, and their words have to really be done what they can not to be spoken by anybody red or blue, because this is sort of the colour purple, and it's sort of not really the colour that of the corporation, the colour of the corporation has just got to be kept at red or blue, and you don't sort of mix it, but that they are just sort of new officers arriving, that's all, not anything else, but the corporation just more or less remains the same. And then in the New Age movement and the raw, which is war, and the uncooking, non-live food, you've got a lot of excessive tannins, and the green cadmium build-up and things can have incurred, and that really replaced monatomic iodine and all sorts of things, and if you've really not got, you're being sort of biologically transmutating one element into another in your intestinal tract beautifully, then, your body sort of really is put to be suffered, you see. And foodstuffs are foodstuffs if they were given to a rat. Certainly experiments show that it does really shorten the life of the rat. And that is the type of foodstuffs that are given to the price-runners and anyone who sold the very, very high phosphate food because they typically would die, apparently, and that could be just collected on an insurance and by the banker sort of thing who owns the stock, you see, being traded. And that's a travesty, of course. But if guts could be assisted to be leaked and lung leaking by intramuscular injection and toxins and things, and excessive sort of poisoning of the skies and the air, those are the things that's sort of very important, and you can be sure that that's a dumbing down, and that these are the things that sort of people are voting for to be politically correct, though fewer and fewer and fewer and fewer and fewer people vote because they're just so disenfranchised. But that's another story. But the extrastitial water excess between the cells, Lukey, because of estrogens, because of all the disaccharide sugars and the banana bender and bicycle rider people, foisting that sugars and things, high glycotic, and the more green that people can get into themselves, the more dopey and because we're frugivores, but people who are doing it, they have no idea. First, they start with such enormous amount of tannins that will stain your skin, stain your sink, and I mean, you can't get the stain out, and that it really stains the body. A honeymoon is had by that ranch or something, where people could do a cleanse a bit, under a tree or something. In the, I don't know what they call it. They could call what they do sort of living rather than live food, because they just sort of really, it's better to call what they do the work of somebody like Anne Wigmore, who's dead, because you won't argue with them, but they're experimenting, and then they'll just have you do a lot of greens or something, which stains your intestinal tract, and you get a bit of a honeymoon, and you might be a bit better as a diabetic for a moment, but watch out what happens afterward, you know what I mean? But the blood-brain barrier really becomes permeable more and more and more, and a lot of those people are very religiously sexist, and God is him and not her, and they just talk about food, and they'll run all over the world, and their brains are woofed by white upper-class females, who are the ones who've put their mores over the culture because they were the ones who were funded by David Rockefeller. The women's movement, which the black woman and the red woman knew was not, right for them because they knew their men were being had. So, but white men really didn't know this, or the white men didn't mind it, I guess. But those women caused everybody to imagine that power was equivalent to access to external reward, and which in the 80s got corrected, of course. A lot of surveys were done and they corrected the foolish behaviour of those women, because boys today certainly are the ones that are being drugged, and there was even some Texas women and senators and people that were really gun-ho to do what they could to cause testosterone not to be in boys, that testosterone was the problem, But in 1988, the Women's Encyclopedia still had it that boys didn't experience any pain. And a lot of that sort of is still of the fertility cult, a sexism that's run on people, but if it was to live in a country and you were Arab, and as a mother, would it be all right for you to send your daughter to a country that said if you would put people in jail, they'd be put into prior daughter? Or if, someone's going to be punished, they'd be called clitoralized? I mean, the Arab fathers don't want their sons to be educated in a system where people are being punished, and it has a gender specificness like that where it's very clear. If you're being penalized, meaning, you're being castrated or something, and it had to be accepted of that in your language. Of people who don't speak English, they're appalled at that sort of thing, But you've got to forget that, apparently, if you become an adult, and then too negative to make a positive a fit sort of thing, And then there's no such thing as a negation at your primary level of experience. Doesn't really sort of exist, Lukey. How are we doing, mate, in the program?
Oh, amazing, Doc. We're at about 2.5 minutes left.
Well, it's a beautiful thing because the banker really loves to confuse what is the brain has a great Velcro for naturally, and then what it has got a good Teflon for typically, and it sort of reverses everything around, what should stick, which is something beautiful, sort of is slipping, and then what should be not so good is sort of a Velcro sort of thing, But in 400,000 U.S. boys killed, 20% of those were killed by friendly fire. That's a lot. That's 80,000 or more. I don't know if that's acceptable, really. I mean, only a few kids got really lead poisoning from licking toys, and they created laws, to stop kids. Just a few kids got killed, by lead toys and stuff. It's just a bit ridiculous, I think. That's 80,000 soldiers, mate. Is that really acceptable? we're just talking about American soldiers, but only 3 people blew the whistle at Abu Ghabu, and the rest of them were being retaliated against, and that's what they said. They would never blow the whistle because they'd be retaliated against. And the Max Planck Institute shows how damaging rumour is and things, and how bad it is that people can have blasphemed about their neighbour, you know what I mean? And how wrong that is, like Rupert Murdoch, how blasphemous the New York Post is, and these 4 major networks and things, which are very serious fear-mongering, a warmonger, run by phantom and dumb as beetle editors that are sheepalised and have to be able to be sheepalised sort of people, you know. Mm. Are you there, Lukey?
Yeah, mate.
Anyway, I was called a bit of a kook, you know, because I was really caring to stop sexually mutilating boys. Kook, you know, because I was really caring to stop sexually mutilating boys. Kook, you know, because I was really caring to stop sexually mutilating boys. Kook, you know,